Chapter 18 explains activity-based costing and other cost management tools. The learning objectives for this chapter include to develop activity-based costs, or ABC, use activity-based management, ABM, to achieve target costs, to describe a just-in-time inventory production system and record its transactions, and use the 4 types of quality costs to make decisions. The first learning objective is to develop activity-based costs, or ABC. Now we turn to a more accurate method to attach costs to products called activity-based costing. We'll discuss how to develop an ABC system and compare it to traditional methods you learned about in the previous chapter. We have seen that direct costs, materials and labor, are easy to assign to products, but indirect costs, utilities, supervisor salaries, and plant depreciation are another story. In this indirect costs, it is in the indirect costs, and they are significant, that must be allocated somehow. One way to manage costs is to refine the way direct costs are allocated. Before business got so competitive, managers could limit their focus to a broad business function, such as production, and use a single rate to allocate manufacturing overhead costs to their inventory, as we demonstrated in Chapter 17. Today's environment calls for more refined cost accounting. Managers need better data to set prices and identify the most profitable products. They drill down to focus on the costs incurred by each activity within the production function. This has led to a better way to allocate indirect costs to production, which is activity-based costing. Activity-based costing, or ABC, focuses on activities. The cost of those activities become the building blocks for measuring or allocating the cost to products and services. Many large companies use ABC. Each activity has its own and usually unique cost driver. The main difference between ABC and traditional systems is that ABC uses a separate allocation rate for each activity. Traditional systems, as demonstrated in Chapter 17, usually use one rate. Each activity has its own cost driver. Activity-based costs are more accurate because ABC considers the resources or the activities each product usually uses. There are 4 steps to activity-based costing. The first is to identify each activity and estimate its total indirect cost. The next, the cost driver for each activity is identified, and then management estimates the quantity of each driver's allocation base. Third, a cost allocation rate is computed for each activity. Last, the indirect costs are allocated to the cost object, the product or service. In Step 3 of ABC, the cost allocation rate is determined by dividing the estimated total indirect cost by the estimated total quantity of the allocation base. Notice how this formula is really the same as the predetermined overhead allocation formula described in the prior chapter. In Step 4, the cost allocation rate determined in Step 3 is multiplied by the actual quantity of the allocation base to compute the allocated activity cost. Controller, then uses the ABC costs allocated from Exhibit 18-7 to recompute manufacturing overhead costs as shown in this exhibit. For each product, Colin adds the total cost of setup DVD burning, and assembly. He then divides each product's total manufacturing overhead cost by the number of DVDs produced to get the overhead cost per DVD product. Activity-based costs are more accurate because ABC considers the resources or the activities each product actually uses. Based on SmartTouch's traditional cost system, Colin computed each product's gross profit as shown in Exhibit 18-5. The gross profit for the specialty DVD is $20 per DVD, 5 times as high as the $4 gross profit for the Excel DVD. SmartTouch CEO Sheena Bright is surprised that the specialty DVD appears so much more profitable. She asks Colin to check this out. Colin confirms that the gross profit per DVD is 5 times as high for the specialty DVD. Bright wonders whether SmartTouch should produce more specialty DVDs. Controller Colin then uses the ABC costs allocated from Exhibit 18-7 to recompute manufacturing overhead costs as shown in Exhibit 18-8. For each product, Colin adds the total costs of setup, DVD burning, and assembly. He then divides each product's total manufacturing overhead costs by the number of DVDs produced to get the overhead cost per DVD product. Short exercise 18.3 reviews the computation of the indirect manufacturing cost per unit. The indirect manufacturing cost for product A is $81.50. For product B is $342.40.